to begin with the concerns about North Korea. We just got satellite images indicating that North Korea is restoring a missile launch site it previously claimed to be dismantling. This has sparked concerns that North Korea may be wavering on some of the gestures it made to demonstrate its willingness to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. National Security Advisor John Bolton telling Lou Dobbs last night that North Korea must completely give up its nuclear weapons or face even tougher sanctions.
If they're not willing to do it, then I think President Trump has been very clear they're not going to get relief from the crushing economic sanctions that have been imposed on them, and we'll look at ramping those sanctions up, in fact.
The latest news comes in the wake of last week's U.S.-North Korean summit meeting in Hanoi, Vietnam, which failed to make headway on nuclear and sanctions issues. Let's bring in Riley Walters, an analyst on Asia at the Heritage Foundation, to discuss all of this. Riley, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
What does this say that the North Koreans are rebuilding this site about the President Trump's negotiating strategy and also the possibility of a third summit?
Well, North Korea has always been sort of an unreliable partner in these talks since the beginning. This is one of the reasons why it's been pressing that the president stay tough on North Korea, full pressure on both economic and diplomatic efforts, and it's one of the reasons why it was good for him to walk away from the past summit because. Well, North Korea, it's unlikely that they will, immediately cease their operations.
Riley, have we made any progress with North Korea?
I wouldn't necessarily say that we would. In fact, we've probably taken steps backwards. We have stalled the military exercises that we've been conducting with South Korea every year, and this has a sort of a negative effect on our military capabilities, our readiness. In the case of something happening with North Korea.
I'm also wondering, Riley, if we've made any progress when it comes to the trade negotiations with China. I know we are very close, to quote Secretary of State Pompeo, we're on the cusp of a deal. But if you look at the expectations for the Commerce Department report on trade data that will arrive, for all of last year, the trade deficit with the rest of the world is expected to top $600 billion, which means under President Trump, it grew by about $100 billion. That can't be good news. What do you make of that?
Well, certainly the president's not going to like the news. I mean, the trade deficit specifically with China has been one of the targets of these negotiations. But, there's a lot of misinformation, or at least, the folks in the White House believe that the trade deficit is inherently a bad thing. They usually relate it to unemployment. Growing deficit means more unemployment, but this isn't necessarily true. If anything, the trade deficit is more connected with the strength of the U.S. economy. So the fact that we have a strong economy right now and the fact that China's economy is slowing means that the trade deficit is going to grow. And whether a deal is made or not, that doesn't necessarily mean that the trade deficit will actually decrease either.
All right, well, let's listen to what the White House has to say about China's economy. This was Larry Kudlow with Brett Baer last night.
I think China has been hurt more than we have. The China stock market really crashed for a while. Now it's coming back on this better news. Our stock market went down, had its correction. It's come back on better news.
What do you make of that?
Again, this White House has placed a lot of emphasis on the stock market. But, recent reports this week have shown that, these tariffs, from the beginning, Americans have always been paying these tariffs. Obviously, these taxes are only collected from American importers, consumers and producers alike. But the economic cost recent reports show that the economic cost is mostly being borne by Americans and not necessarily the Chinese. Has the Chinese economy not been good recently? Yes, but that's a trend that's been happening over the past several years.
They did lower their GDP forecast, however, Beijing did. And also our Edward Lawrence, Riley, has been reporting that American companies are starting to shift their supply chains out of China, and that does affect the world's #2 economy. But we do have to leave it there. Riley Walters, thank you so much for getting up with us this morning.
Thank you.